In this video essay, I will be analyzing the use of framing as a cinematographic stylistic element. A frame is a single image of film or video. Framing a shot involves composing the visual content of a series of frames as seen from a single point of view. When framing a shot, the filmmaker creates a visual within the dimensions of the lens, just as a painter creates a visual within the dimensions of a canvas. A major difference is that most frame shots include people and/or things in motion. Another is that the first objective of framing is not to create a picture worth 1,000 words, it is to advance the motion picture's narrative. I argue that in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, framing is used to draw attention to the contrast between the classic American dream and the reality of life in the Western frontier. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is a modern Western anthology, the brainchild of the Coen brothers, which contains a series of 6 short stories separate of each other. These short stories are, however, all unified by their theme of death, in a morbidly comical display. Furthermore, I will be using a selection of 4 other modern Western films to compare similarities in their uses of framing to The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. These films are The Revenant, The Hateful Eight, Django Unchained, and lastly, The Magnificent Seven. Establishing shots and extreme wide-angle shots are expertly used in all of these films to set up the locale of where the action takes place, and to display the breathtaking views of the North American landscape, most often with the juxtaposition of a lone person against a large space. It's almost a romantic notion, nature as a reflection of the emotional state of the character. This is directly tied to reveal the reality of living in the Western frontier. The American dream is connected to the beauty of the Wild West and contrasted to the tough lifestyle and mortality that comes with it. Another example of framing in the film is the progression from the combination of the long or full shot and slow tracking to the cowboy shot. It is often used to set the scene before a showdown and to build the tension. This often empowers the protagonist in the frame, as in these scenes the shots are also from a low angle or around the hip or lower. These shots end up in cowboy shots, probably the most authentic mark of Western films. The cowboy shot allows for the audience to see the expression of the characters, but also to keep the body in frame, thus building the tension, as the gun on the hip is where the audience expects the action to come from. The low-angle shots of characters in the movies often empower them. By placing the camera at a low angle, looking up at the characters gives them a superiority over the viewer. In the case of the scene from Django Unchained, it gives them the power to kill. Such was the life in the Wild West, of power dynamics, to kill or to be killed. However, in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the use of the low angle seems contradictory. The nameless cowboy played by James Franco is about to be hanged, facing his death, and yet he is framed from a low angle. This suggests he accepts his fate and is superior even in his final moments, not truly defeated. This happens again in the scene of the gold prospector. The low-angle shot places him in a position of superiority just after striking gold, but pans out to reveal his fate has just as quickly turned upside down. A gun is pointed at the back of his head. The contradictory use of the low-angle shot in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs provides an element of shock value that reveals the reality of life on the Western frontier and contrasts to the American dream, the fragile mortality of the senseless killings that take place. In The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, framing is effectively used to draw attention to the contrast between the classic American dream and the reality of life in the Western frontier. The framing methods I chose to explore in this selection of film were establishing and extreme wide shots, long and full shots, slow tracking shots, cowboy shots, low angle shots, and close-ups. Although I was able to identify them in each of the films and draw similarities, each of these techniques are used differently in the respective films because their plots vary. Framing is an effective technique that visually communicates and develops the plot and narrative.